Jaya Radha Madhava Kunja Bihari.
Jaya Radha Madhava Kunja Bihari. Jaya Radha
Madhava Kunja Bihari.
Gopi Jana Vallabha Girivaradhari.
Vijana Vallabha Girivaradhari.
Gopi Jana Vallabha Girivaradhari.
Vijana Vallabha Girivaradhari.
Yasodanandana Braja Jana Ranjana.
Nandana Braja Jana Ranjana.
Yasodanandana Braja Jana Ranjana.
Yasodanandana Braja Jana Ranjana.
Yamuna Tira Vanachari.
Munatira Vanachari. Vanachari.
Jaya Radha Madhava Kunja Bihari.
Radha Madhava Kunja Bihari.
Jaya Radha Madhava Kunja Bihari.
Radha Madhava Kunja Bihari.
Gopi Jana Vallabha Girivaradhari.
Jana Vallabha Girivaradhari.
Gopi Jana Vallabha Girivaradhari.
Vijana Vallabha Girivaradhari.
Jasodanandana Braja Jana Ranjana.
Shodanandana Braja Jana Ranjana.
Yasodanandana Braja Jana Ranjana.
Shodanandana Braja Jana Ranjana.
Yamunatira Vanachari.
Munatira Vanachari.
Jaya Radha Madhava Kunja Bihari.
Radha Madhava Kunja Bihari.
Jaya Radha Madhava Kunja Bihari.
Madhava Kunja Bihari. Jai Om Vishnupad Paramahamsa Parvikacharya Ashtotor Shri Srimad A.C. Bhakti Vedanta Swami Maharaj Prabhupada Ki Jai. ISKCON Founder Acharya Srila Prabhupada Ki Jai. Jai Om Vishnupad Paramahamsa Parvikacharya Ashtotor Shri Srimad Bhakti Siddhanta Saraswati Goswami Maharaj Prabhupada Ki Jai. Namacharya Srila Haridas Thakur Ki Jai. Prem se kaho Shri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Shri Advaita Gadadhar Shivasari Gaura Bhakta Vrinda Ki Jai. Shri Shri Radha Krishna Gopi Gopa Gopinath Shamakun Radhakun Giri Govardhan Ki Jai. Shri Mayapur Dham Ki Jai. Shri Vrindavan Dham Ki Jai. Jagannath Puri Dham Ki Jai. Ganga Mai Ki Jai. Yamuna Mai Ki Jai. Bhakti Devi Ki Jai. Tulsi Devi Ki Jai. Ananta Koti Vaishnavrinda Ki Jai. Shri Harinam Sankirtan Ki Jai. Grantharaj Srimad Bhagavatam Ki Jai. Samaveda Bhakta Vrinda Ki Jai. Gaura Premanande Hari Hari Bol. All glories to the assembled devotees. All glories to the assembled devotees. All glories to the assembled devotees. All glories to Shri Guru and Shri Gauranga. All glories to Srila Prabhupada. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Good morning. Today we're going to be reading from Srimad Bhagavatam, 5th Canto, Chapter 10, Text 17. If you could repeat after me. Naham Vishanke Suraraja Vajran Na Triyaksha Shulan Na Yamasya Dandat Nagni Arka Somanila Vita Prastrach Chanke Brisham Brahma Kulavamanat Naham Vishanke Suraraja Vrajan Natri Yaksha Shulana Yamasya Dandat Nagni Arka Somanila Vrit Prastrach Chanke Brisham Brahma Kulavamanat Naham Vishanke Suraraja Vajran Natriyaksha Shulana Yamasya Dandat Nagyarka Somanila Vita Prastrach Chanke Brisham Brahmakula Vamanat Naham Vishanke Suraraja Vajran Natriyaksha Shulana Yamasya Dandat Nagi Arka Sumanila Vitavasprach Chanke Bisham Brahmakula Vamanat Ham Vishanke Suraraja Vajran Natraksha Shulana Yamasya Dandat Nagni Narka Samalina Vitavastrach Chanke Brisham Brahma Kulavamanat Vishanke Suraraja Vajran Dandat Strach Chanke Bisham Brahma Kumalavamat Aham Vishanke Suraraja Vajran Dandat Chanke Brisham Brahma Kulavamanat Naham Vishanke Suraraja Vajran Triyaksha Sulana Vimana Dandat Pastrach Chanki Visham Brahma Kulavamanat. Okay, word for word synonyms. Na, not. Aham, I. Vishanke, am afraid. Surarajavarat, from the thunderbolts of the King of Heaven, Indra. Na, nor. Triyaksha Shulat, from the piercing trident of Lord Shiva. Na, nor. Yamasya, of the superintendent of death, Yamaraj. Dandat, from the punishment. Na, nor. Agni, of fire. Arka, of the scorching heat of the sun. Soma, of the moon. Anila, of the wind. Vitapa, of the owner of riches. Kuvera, the treasure of the heavenly planets. Astrat, from the weapons. Shanke, I am afraid. Brisham, very much. Brahmakula, the group of the Brahmanas. Avamanat, from offending. Translation and purport by His Divine Grace, A.C. Bhakti Vedanta Swami Srila Prabhupada. My dear sir, I am not at all afraid of the thunderbolt of King Indra, nor am I afraid of the serpentine piercing trident of Lord Shiva. I do not care about the punishment of Yamaraj, the superintendent of death, nor am I afraid of fire, scorching sun, moon, wind, nor the weapons of Kuvera. Yet I am afraid of offending a Brahmana. I am very much afraid of this. When Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu was instructing Srila Rupa Goswami about the Dasha Ashwamedha Gatha in Prayag, he pointed out very clearly the seriousness of offending a Vaishnava. He compared the vaisnava-aparadha to a hati mata, a mad elephant. When a mad elephant enters a garden, it spoils all the fruits and flowers. Similarly, if one offends a Vaishnava, he spoils all his spiritual assets. Offending a Brahmana is very dangerous, and this was known to Maharaj Rahugana. He therefore frankly admitted his fault. There are many dangerous things: thunderbolts, fire, Yamaraj's punishment, the punishment of Lord Shiva's trident, and so forth. But none is considered as serious as offending a Brahmana like Jadabharat. Therefore, Maharaj Rahugana immediately descended from his palanquin and fell flat before the lotus feet of the Brahmin, Jadabharat, just to be excused. Om Jnana Timarandasya Jnana Jana Shalakaya Chakshurun Militam Yena Tasmai Shri Gurve Namaha. Shri Chaitanya Manopishtam Stapitam Yena Bhutale Swayam Rupa Kadamayam Dadati Swapadantikam Vandeham Shri Guru Shri Yutapar Kamalam Shri Gurun Vaisnavam Shri Rupam Sagrajatam Sagana Ragunatam Vitam Tam Sajivam Sadvaitam Savadutam Parijana Sahitam Krishna Chaitanya Devam Shri Radha Krishna Padan Sahagana Lalita Shri Vishakan Vitamscha Hey Krishna Karuna Sindhu Dinabandhu Jagatpate Gopisha Gopika Kanta Radha Kanta Namostate Takancha Gaurangi Hridhay Vrindavaneshware Vrishabhanu Sita Devi Pranamami Hare Priye Vancha Kalpatarubhyascha Kripa Sindhubhya Evacha Patitanam Pavanebhyo Vaishnavyo Namo Namah Jai Shri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Shri Advaita Gadadhara Shivasari Gaura Bhaktavrinda Hare Krishna Krishna Hare 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 Rama 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 Hare Hare. So I'll read the translation again. My dear sir, I am not at all afraid of the thunderbolt of King Indra, nor am I afraid of the serpentine piercing trident of Lord Shiva. I do not care about the punishment of Yamaraj, the superintendent of death, nor am I afraid of fire, scorching sun, moon, wind, nor the weapons of Kuvera. Yet I am afraid of offending a Brahmana. I am very much afraid of this. So this made me curious. I wanted to find out who was struck by lightning the most. And it states in the Guinness World Record that this man named Roy Sullivan, he was struck 7 times by lightning. It was between 1942 and 1977. He was a park ranger in Shenandoah National Park in Virginia, and he was hit with lightning 7 on different occasions, and he survived all of them. And he gained the nicknames Human Lightning Conductor and Human Lightning Rod, and he holds the Guinness World Record. And so I also wanted to find out what was the power of lightning. And it says that a typical lightning flash is about 300 million volts and about 30,000 amps. And King Rahugana, he said he's not afraid of a thunderbolt. So Ravana once asked for Lord Shiva's trident. In the Ramayana, there was a servant who stopped Ravana from entering Lord Shiva's abode in Mount Kailash. And Ravana, he was very angry. So what he did was, Ravana, he was a demon. He had 10 heads and he had 20 powerful arms. So with his 20 massive arms, he plunged his arms into the side of the mountain and he attempted to lift Mount Kailash. And Parvati, Lord Shiva's consort, she became afraid. So she cursed Ravana, saying, just like you have caused me fear and anxiety, your death will be caused by a woman. So Sita is the cause. And so Lord Shiva, he Lord Shiva told Parvati, don't worry. So he stood up and then he applied a little bit of pressure from his toe. And this created an unbearable pressure on Ravana. And Ravana's arms were crushed. And Ravana's ministers advised him to pacify Lord Shiva. So Ravana was he was learned in Vedic scriptures. So after 100 years in pain and agony, Ravana still continued to offer prayers. Then finally Lord Shiva let him go. Ravana then asked Lord Shiva for his trident. And Lord Shiva smiled and said, so be it. And Ravana, he wanted this trident for assurance when he came to battles. Narada Muni convinced Ravana to go after Yamaraj, the superintendent of death. So he traveled and he finally reached the abode of death. And Narada Muni said, if you conquer death, you can actually create a universal chaos. So Ravana liked the idea. And so Ravana, he fought against Yamaraj. Do you guys know this pastime? Okay. So yeah, it was a fierce battle. Arrows were being shot, and then, so death personified, he told Yamaraj, let me handle this, And so Yamaraj, he was infuriated, and he said, no, I'm going to kill him myself. And before he was going to release his mace, Lord Brahma appeared, and he requested to Yamaraj, don't kill him. I gave him a special boon that he can't be killed by anyone except a human being, which is Lord Ramachandra. And nobody heard this conversation between Yamaraj and Lord Brahma. And so after this, Yamaraj, he disappeared. And Ravana, he thought he succeeded in beating Yamaraj, so he left. And Lord Shiva's trident is very powerful and it's very famous. So this King Rahugana is very bold by saying he's not afraid of King Indra's thunderbolt nor for Lord Shiva's trident or the punishment of Yamaraj. And most people, they have different fears. They have the fear of height, fear of water, drowning, and fear of commitment. But these fears are nothing in comparison to Yamaraj's punishment. And we all know the story of Ajamil, the very sinful fallen Brahmana. It's described that he had a beautiful young wife, but he gave her up to pursue this prostitute. And Shukadev Goswami, he tells to Maharaj Parikshit, my dear king, when a man persecutes great souls, all his benedictions of longevity, beauty, fame, religion, blessings, and promotion to higher planets will be destroyed. Before joining the ashram, I used to work in Coronado. And I don't know if I told this before, but I worked night shifts. And so there was a lot of strange things that would happen. I remember I would hear a voice that would say, help me, help me. It was distant. And so I ignored it, I didn't want to go look for it. So I looked through the different hallways and I see this tall, skinny lady, and her knees were shaking. She's holding onto the side rail saying, help me, help me. So I grabbed onto her, I put her in a wheelchair, and then I transferred her to her bed. And so I asked her, why are you getting up? And then she said, I'm afraid. And I said, what are you afraid of? And she said, you see that couch? There's people sitting there. And I looked to my right, and there was nobody there. And then I said, are you sure I don't see anybody there? And then she said, yes, one of them has a tail. Like that. And so I said, okay. So I put the sheets over her, I put her side rails up, and then I left. And it's also described in the Srimad Bhagavatam that those that are sinful, they actually see the Yamadutas. And the Yamadutas, they're very fierce looking. And it's described that they're ferocious and frightening persons with ropes in their hands, unruly hair on their heads, and bodily hair like bristles. These assistants of Yamaraj had come to drag Jamil out of his body and take him to the core of Yamaraj. Sometimes a dying man cries out in fear when he sees the Yamadutas. So Jamil was very fearful also. And when Yamaraj explained the glories of the Lord's name, fame, and attributes, the Yamadutas have given the dangerous behavior of approaching devotees. For the Yamadutas, a devotee is dangerous. And another example of someone who had committed an offense to a great Vaishnava was Durvasa Muni and to Maharaj Ambarish. Once Maharaj Ambarish was worshipping the Supreme Personality of Godhead in Vrindavan, and he was observing the vow of Dwadashi, and it's the day after Ekadashi. When he was about to break his fast, the great mystic yogi, Durvasa Muni, appeared. And Srila Prabhupada says that he was an unwelcome guest. He appeared out of nowhere. And so King Ambarish, he respectfully received Durvasa Muni, and after accepting the invitation to eat there, he decided to bathe in the Yamuna River at noontime. And because he was absorbed in samadhi, he did not come back very soon. So Maharaj Ambarish, he asked the learned Brahmins, what should I do? I don't want to break the fast, and I don't want to commit an offense to this great sage. So they advised him, you can drink water, because drinking water, not only does it break the fast, but it also doesn't. And by mystic power, Durvasa Muni could understand that this had happened, so he became very, very angry. When he returned, he chastised Maharaj Ambarish. And he wasn't satisfied by chastising him, so he actually created a demon from his hairs. And it's described that the demon appeared like the fire of death. The Supreme Personality of Godhead, however, is the protector of his devotees. And to protect Maharaj Ambarish, he sent his disc, the Sudarshan Chakra, which immediately vanquished the fiery demon and then pursued Durvasa Muni. And it's described that Durvasa Muni was so powerful, he reached the abode of Lord Brahma, Lord Shiva, and the Vaikuntha planets. And not anyone is qualified to reach the spiritual planets. So you can imagine how powerful Durvasa Muni was. And Lord Shiva and Lord Brahma told him, we can't protect you, so please approach Lord Vishnu. So when he went to Vaikuntha, he asked Lord Narayan, please excuse me. And then Lord Vishnu told him, I can't excuse you. You have to go to the devotee that you offended and beg for his pardon. And in the Bhagavatam, the Supreme Personality of Godhead said to the Brahmana, I am completely under the control of my devotees. Indeed, I am not at all independent. Because my devotees are completely devoid of material desires, I sit only within the cores of their hearts. What to speak of my devotee? Even those who are devotees of my devotee are very dear to me. So we should understand our position. So Durvasa Muni came back to Ambarish Maharaj and he asked for forgiveness. He fell at his feet and he actually clasped him. And Ambarish Maharaj is described that he felt ashamed. He was embarrassed that this Brahmana fell at his feet. And usually the etiquette is that a Brahmana is superior to a Kshatriya. And so Ambarish Maharaj, he offered prayers to the Sudarshan Chakra. And Durvasa Muni, after his life was spared, he said, My dear King, today I have experienced the greatness of devotees of the Supreme Personality of Godhead. For although I have committed an offense, you have prayed for my good fortune. And it says that the duty of a Brahmin is to culture the quality of forgiveness, which is illuminating like the sun. The Supreme Personality of Godhead, Hari, is pleased with those who are forgiving. So Ambrish Maharaj forgave Durvasa Muni, and it's described he stayed in one spot for 1 year. He waited for Durvasa Muni to come back, and then he offered him a meal. And then Durvasa Muni asked him, please also take food. So they ate. And why is offending a devotee so serious? In the Srimad Bhagavatam, Shukadev Goswami tells Maharaj Parikshit, anyone who fails to immediately leave the place where he hears criticism of the Supreme Lord or his devotee will certainly fall down, bereft of his pious credit. And Srila Prabhupada, he says, but a devotee is above the brahmanas. That is the position of devotee. So devotee is very glorious. And we should always be chanting, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. King Rahugana, he accepted Jada Bharat as his spiritual master. And what is the role of a disciple? When Krishna, when he was going to Gurukul, he had a friend named Sudama. And Sandipani Muni, their teacher, he told Krishna and Sudama, this indeed is the duty of all true disciples, to repay the debt to their spiritual master by offering him with pure hearts their wealth and even their lives. And a devotee should not feel angry or have ill feelings when corrected. And when I started coming to the temple, I was chastised in so many ways. I couldn't have my back against the wall. You have to put a mat. Dravida Prabhu, he was the one. Yeah. And then don't put any holy books on the ground. Don't eat while standing up. Or Mapati, he told me that. He said, I'm going to be a horse in my next life. So all these corrections, I really try to teach others too, so that way we don't make the same mistakes. And one of the most famous personalities that was chastised was Arjuna. He was chastised by Krishna so Arjuna, he started, speaking on arguments of the Vedas and this and that, and Krishna chastised him as soon as he accepted Krishna as his spiritual master. In the Bhagavad Gita, Krishna says, while speaking learned words, you are mourning for what is not worthy of grief. Those who are wise lament neither for the living nor for the dead. And so Srila Prabhupada says that Arjuna, he was speaking like a pandit, a learned person. But the learned person does not lament for the body, whether it's living or dead, because he knows that the soul is eternal. And so the question is, are we willing to lay down our lives, willing to give up our own personal comforts for the sake of our spiritual master? The answer should be yes. And once I moved into the temple, I was talking to Dmitry about this from Russia. And so I told him, when I move into the temple, there's no turning back. I'm not going to go back out. I'm not going to pursue a career. I'm not going to, get married. I didn't have any desire for this. So in this way, I had no regrets. I can fully dedicate my life to serving Srila Prabhupada, the temple, the devotees, and my spiritual master. And great example of Srila Prabhupada's disciples, they dedicated their lives in serving the mission of Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu. And I would like to, if I can, share some Sankirtan stories. So yesterday at Balboa Park, we get a lot of questions, what do these books do? And one of the most frequent questions that we get asked is, why are you doing this? So I told this young man, these books, they help me to become a better person. So he asked me how. So I don't like to talk about myself, but I told him before I was always hanging around with a lot of bad people. Gangbangers, drug dealers, all of this nonsense. So I told him now I'm a monk. I'm trying to become a monk. So he saw the huge difference that these books had on me. So I told him these books, they help you to develop good qualities. It helps you to become a proper human being. And so he saw how sincere I was, so he took the set, the one that we were making yesterday. And he thanked me and he said, I hope these books can help me also. And I can see from his face he was struggling, he was having a hard time in life. When I was at the immigration office, yes, so I was holding the Bhagavad Gita as I was reading. And when I was called up for my number, the lady had asked me, what's that book you're holding? And she asked me, is that about your beliefs, your religion? So I said, yes, it's a wonderful book. And so as she was doing my fingerprints and taking a picture, she was asking me questions. And I was telling her, yes, we believe in karma. We believe that every action that you perform, it has a reaction to it. And she appreciated the knowledge that was in the book. So I offered her a Bhagavad Gita. And she said, I would love to, but I'm working. And it was, the immigration office is very, it's a secure place, so they can't take anything. So I gave her a card. I said, if you change your mind. So she hasn't replied or anything like that. But yeah, she was interested because I was dressed in my dhoti, I was dressed in my kurta, like that. And when we distribute books, one of the most difficult people that take a book are Indian body. And they would tell me, oh, we have the Bhagavad Gita. And the question that Vijay asked is, have you read it? And most of them, they haven't read it. And so I asked them, you should take a Bhagavad Gita. There's many versions, and I've read 5 and they're completely off. So we're presenting it as it is by Srila Prabhupada. And most of them, they don't see the importance of the Bhagavad Gita. But a few days ago in La Jolla Cove, I was distributing books and I had 2 nice encounters. This Mataji, she said, oh, the Bhagavad Gita. She was so happy. And I said, yes, and then she said, I'm so happy to see that someone is distributing the Bhagavad Gita. And then so she saw how, we're working hard to try to educate the people. And so I invited her to the temple, and she actually came that day. She took darshan of the deities, and then I gave her a plate of prasad, her and her husband. And this other Mataji, I said, have you heard of this book? And I showed her the Bhagavad Gita. She said, yes, of course, from India. And I said, wow, you should take it. And then so she came over to the table, and I told her we're actually distributing these nice sets of 4 books. And then so I told her this book, it changed my life, The Science of Self-Realization. And then so I told her it explains who you are and what the purpose of life is, which is very important for the human being. And she took the set. She gave a donation. And yesterday I met this other nice lady from France. She was traveling. And so I told her how to live properly in this world. So I showed her the verse in the Bhagavad Gita, 6th chapter, about someone who has conquered the mind, happiness and distress, heat and cold, honor and dishonor, all the same. And so she said, wow, I've never heard of this before. And I told her, yeah, this is how to see adversities and, even happiness in life the same. And so I was speaking to her for maybe 5 minutes, and then she said, I'm very glad I came to Balboa Park. And so she said, I'm very happy to have met you. So she took a set, and then she left. In La Jolla Cove, I stopped this young man and his family, and I was explaining how important the mind is and how the mind can't be trusted. And they looked like they were from like a gangster family, like that. So I told her, yeah, I was doing all that stuff too. And then so I was explaining how suicide, depression, anxiety, stress, it's all due to the mind. And after I was explaining, there were 3 family members that were there. And I can tell someone in their family had committed suicide. So, and he took the book and he said, I have been looking for books like these, but I can never find them. So he thanked me, and then they walked away. And then La Jolla Cove, I tried stopping a man, and he turned to me and he sure said, I hate everything but dogs and beer. Dogs and beer. So he refused, so I said, oh, I guess that's true. And when I was working, my coworkers, they would tell me I'm going to my second home. And I would ask them, what's your second home? And they would say the casino. So people spend their hard-earned money on so many nonsense. And so I asked her, what if you lose all your money? And they said, oh, I'm going to keep working. So they make money, and then they spend it, make money, and they don't go anywhere. In Balboa Park, sometimes people try to come up with smart sayings, Would you like a book? No, I don't know how to read. Or I'm allergic to reading. So people say these things. So this one man, he said, no thanks, I like being stressed. And I looked at him like, really? And the reason why is because they want to try to impress their girlfriend, or they want to try to look cool. But in actuality, they're stressed out if their girlfriend leaves them. In the Srimad Bhagavatam, it talks about kings being very powerful. In the kingdom, they rule the citizens, they take charge. But when they're in a private room with their queen, they become a pet animal in the hands of a woman. I met a person in Balboa Park. He paints. So I saw him in Balboa Park and in La Jolla Cove. And what he told me was, I asked him, you like painting? And he said, yeah, I like painting. And I said, how often do you do this? And then he said, as long as my wife doesn't know. So he said, if my wife finds out that I'm out here painting, she'll kill me. When Narada Muni, when he saw Nala Kuvera and Manigriva, this is what he said. Among all the attractions of material enjoyment, the attraction of riches bewilders one's intelligence more than having beautiful bodily features, taking birth in an aristocratic family, and being learned. The result is that one engages his wealth in enjoying wine, women, and gambling. And a few days ago, Balaram Prabhu, he was talking about freedom, how he went to Turkey, and it's not fit to go preaching out in public, and so I wanted to speak on that. And this country, we have a lot of freedom. We can dress however we want. We can have surgery to change our gender. I don't know, so many different things. And then so I was explaining this to some people, that the body changes. And he said, what do you mean the body changes? And I told him, yeah, a man becomes a woman like that. So we started laughing. And here we're able to set up books. We're able to wear a dhoti and tilak, wear a shaved head with shika. There's no restriction, except there are some places that require permits. I was telling Dimitri from Russia that we passed by what's that place? Old Town, and I was kicked out of there twice. I set up on this main road, and the business owners, they asked me, do you have a permit? And I said no. So they said, you can't set up here. And when I was putting my books away, there was these two Indian gentlemen. They came to my table, and they said, you have the Bhagavad Gita? And I said, yes. So I handed it to them, and I said, you should take one. And one of them took one, and that boy, his name was Prakash. Not this Prakash, but another Prakash. So I set up where the stores are, and there was a lot of people coming to my table. And then I saw a man in a uniform, and I saw, here he goes. So he approached me and said, do you have a permit? And I said, no, sir, I don't. And then he said, you can't set up here. This is federal property. And so I said, okay. So I had to pack up and leave. I set up at the harbor, Dimitri's favorite spot from Russia. Yeah. And so my spiritual master, His Holiness Bhadranaran Swami Maharaj, he was telling me the difficulties of book distribution in the early days. They would distribute books in movie theaters, parking lots, the airport, and what they would do is they would wear wigs. So Maharaj was telling me that they were going to a movie theater, and him and another devotee, they would split up. One devotee would take this lane, and then they would skip this lane because this devotee would take the second, like that. So every other lane, and they didn't coordinate that properly. So Maharaj, he approached this car, and he was saying that, movie theaters, people do a lot of weird stuff. So Maharaj was saying this guy, he was packing a bowl of marijuana. And when Maharaj knocked on his door, this guy came out with the pistol. And he said, "What are you doing?" And so Maharaj saw that, and then he turned around, and the person grabbed Maharaj's hair, and it came out. It was a wig. And then so the man said, "Sweet Jesus." So Maharaj, he ran for it. And so, yeah, the devotees in the early days, they would go through all these difficulties just to distribute Srila Prabhupada's books. And Maharaj, he also told me this nice story. This devotee, he was pretty brand new, so Maharaj had to convince him a long time, attempted to convince him to go out on book distribution. So the devotee finally agreed, and they were distributing at a stoplight. So Maharaj would take this, and then the other devotee would take this stoplight. And he noticed that this new devotee, he was being harassed by this car. So Maharaj, he walked over to the driver's side, and he said, "Hey, is there a problem?" So the guy grabbed Maharaj's kurta, and he tore it. So they ran. And then so this man, after he turned green, he went around, and he was attempting to run them over. Yeah. And then so Maharaj, he someone hide behind this gas pump, because even if he tries to run over Maharaj, he'll kill Maharaj and himself. So Maharaj was thinking, okay, this will protect me. And so this enraged man, he was revving his engine. He was going to go for it. So the people in the Chevron gas station, they came out with clubs. They came out with all these different tools. So the person got afraid. He was afraid, and then he took off. He left. And the people working there, they told Maharaj, "You should go to the police station and report this. You don't know what else this person might do." So Maharaj said, "No, I don't want him to go to jail. This is just a typical day in Sankirtan." So they said, "No, you should." And thankfully, they got hold of the license plate number. So Maharaj and this devotee, they were sitting at a table, and across from them was this man. So what had happened was that this man's wife divorced him. And when he came to work, he was fired. And the last thing he wanted to hear was this person distributing books. So Maharaj was telling him, "No, we don't want to press charges, this and that." And then so the devotee, or the man, he saw how saintly Maharaj and this person was. He didn't want to press charges. He didn't want him to go to jail. So the police officers asked him, "Well, what about a fine? Is there a certain amount?" So Maharaj said, "Well, this kurta cost me about $20. And then he said, "And when we go on books, we make about $30 an hour. And this process took 2 hours. So that would make 60, 120 plus another 20 is like around 140. So the man, he felt so bad. What he did was he gave him $400. And Maharaj said in those days, that was a lot of money. A lot of money. So they came to the temple, and then they reported what had happened. And so, book distribution is very blissful. It's a nice way to do good service. We go out there and we spend a good amount of time. We talk to so many different people. We get a lot of no's, but like Vijay Prabhu said, it's very purifying. It gets rid of our false ego, this and that. And when you actually develop a taste for book distribution, you want to keep going out and out and out. So that's what motivates me. And like I said, nobody wakes up to become Krishna conscious. They don't wake up and say, "Hey, I want to be a devotee." No, it takes the mercy of a devotee to pull them to Krishna consciousness. Thank you. That's all I have. Is there any questions, comments?
Hare Krishna.
Hare Krishna, Vijay Krishna Prabhu. We have a local question or comment here.
Yes, I can wait, no problem.
Thank you. Yes, Dimitri from Russia.
Yeah, thank you for the class, Prabhu. I just want to go back to the purport. It says here, if one offends a Vaishnava, he spoils all the spiritual assets. So, and I remember the text in the Bhagavad Gita, how there's no loss of diminution in this endeavor. So maybe you could comment on this text.
Okay, so there's a materialist and then a person that's endeavoring for spiritual knowledge. And someone that's materialistic, he loses everything. But a devotee or someone that's endeavoring for self-realization, there's no loss and diminution in that. So these are two different activities. Does that help? No? Okay. Dravida Prabhu.
I think the question is there's two devotees in the temple, and one offends another. And so the devotee who makes the offense has trouble with his sadhana, and he bloops because he made a serious offense. It's happened in the past, So how is that not a loss or diminution, right? The offender, in other words, he was also doing devotional service. And I think what I would say is that it's not you don't lose, it doesn't diminish, but it can be a halt. You could spend that lifetime, in the wilderness, not doing any devotional service, but it'll come back next life. It's not that you're condemned forever. So there's still some asset in whatever you've done, but it's horrible to consider how long you could be out without devotional service, or even in one lifetime. So we should avoid it like the plague. Hare Krishna.
Thank you, Dravida Prabhu. Yes, Balarama?
What you were saying about the wigs, devotees wearing wigs, it was very common. Everybody did it, yeah. Like, for example, Bhakti Kevin, our Bhakti Kevin, he was telling me, because he was just becoming a devotee, and he went to Australia. And, he was at the temple and with all the devotees there. And there was one particular devotee, he's still around, Atul Krishna in Mayapur. Yeah, he's teaching in Mayapur. Anyway, so Kevin met this many devotees. And so then all of a sudden Kevin, he's a new bhakt or whatever, so he goes out and he takes a bike ride. He takes a bike ride around the city, and he's just kind of, wandering around the city and everything. And then he's at a park, far from the temple. And all of a sudden, Kevin, he's like looking at this person. He's like, man, he looks really familiar. It's like, do I know him? But he's like, I don't know anybody in Australia, because he was just visiting Australia. He doesn't know anybody. He's like, he looks really familiar. And then he just kind of gets close. She's like looking at him. And then this person, he goes like this. And he takes the wig off, and he goes, hey, Hare Krishna. And it was Atul Krishna, So anyways, he met him at the temple. But
I'll tell it. Wasn't it Pragosh who was being... So it's in the airport in the early days. Everyone's had a wig, And devotees would be harassed sometimes. So I'm probably making a mistake, but he was being harassed by this one guy who was threatening him, And so he was freshly shaved up, Pragosh, So he took the wig off and threw it on the ground, and he made a stance, like a karate stance. Ah, he really... And he freaked the guy out, because just to pull the wig off is the thing. And then he goes, he must be, schooled in... The guy ran off.
There's so many wigs
I was distributing books, and this guy I was talking to, he was just getting ready to give a donation, and some guy comes from behind, and he takes my wig off, and he puts it on my shoulder, and he took off. And the guy is standing there that's getting ready to give a donation. He's like, he was shocked, but I didn't flinch. I just just normal, See, everyone just gives a donation. So he gave a donation, took the book, and went off.
Was that in the airport?
That was in the airport. Another time, no, that was in what was it? That was in Miami. Mostly it was in Miami. When I got to LA, back in about 1990, 88, we stopped using the wigs because people were, Shaved heads became like a cool thing. Back in 1980, nobody had a shaved head except for Telly Savalas, Kojak. Only David remembers it. Nobody had shaved heads back then. It was like weird, So that's why we were wearing wigs. Another time I was distributing, this lady walks up to me, takes my wig off, and puts it in my hand and walks away. There was some pretty foul things happening with the wigs.
Another chapter of the Madhya Lila, modern CCA, is being written.
Another time, Praghosh, he was distributing books in Santa Barbara, and he was just trying to distribute a book to a lady, and he said, "Yeah, we just asked for a donation." She said, "Well, I don't have any money, but I could, make you happy." He was proposing it. So he's like, he flipped it. He took his wig off. Went running. Kind of turned her off.
Thank you, Vijay. Yes, Vijay Krishna Prabhu.
Yes, Govardhan Prabhu, thank you very much. You're very kind. Prabhu, the quote from the purport is more or less the same quote brought to you by Dimitri Prabhu. Quote, when a mad elephant enters a garden, it spoils all the fruits and flowers. Similarly, if one offends a Vaishnava, he spoils all his spiritual assets. End quote. So my question is, and this is related also to what I heard yesterday from the class. We are advised to be cautious when we approach a saintly person, a pure devotee. It is more or less like dealing with fire. And why? Because we can commit offenses. Ravida Prabhu mentioned it yesterday. So my question is, while being cautious because of approaching a pure devotee, what is it that I am allowed to do because of this caution? And what is it that I am not allowed to do because of being cautious?
Okay, thank you. So a devotee is very, you can say, important, or a devotee is very special to Krishna because they dedicate their lives in, spreading his glories. And maybe someone can answer this because I have different. Yeah.
We should try to serve devotees, whether they're pure devotees or not pure devotees, and try not to displease devotees or offend devotees. So this is actually also part of the surrender, accepting things favorable. Serving devotees is very favorable for our advancement in Krishna consciousness. Offending devotees is very unfavorable. So this is something, we have to be very careful. This is there's the Bhakti Lata beads. We're watering the Bhakti Lata beads with Shravan and Kirtan, with devotional service. But as the example was given there, that if you offend a devotee, it's like someone coming in and just stomping on the Bhakti Lata bead. So it's very dangerous. Therefore we have to be careful. And therefore the most important instruction, one of the most important, if not the, is Lord Chaitanya said, Tanadapi Srinichena, Tarorapi Mani Mani Kirtanya Sadhari. Think oneself lower than the straw on the street. If we're thinking that we're something big, important, then it's easy to offend someone. Mm-hmm. But if we're understanding, I'm lower than the straw on the street, we would be in no position to offend anyone. Because offending comes from pride. So this verse is so important. Lower than the straw on the street, more tolerant than a tree, devoid of all sense of false prestige, ready to offer all respects to others, without desiring respect for oneself. If one has this mood, then there's no question of offending anybody. Mm-hmm. So it's very important.
That's the answer, Vijay. Krishna Prabhu.
Yes, Prabhu, wonderful answer to my question. Thank you very much. Hare Krishna.
Hare Krishna, thank you. Thank you for your attention. Oh, Bhakta Daniel? No? Okay. All right. Hare Krishna. Agor Shishla Prabhupada.